I personally don't really care much about politics. Granted, the content that I make does get political, but the main discussion points are always going to be about the entertainment media that I love, like games, anime, etc. I do get a lot of my knowledge from YouTube. I get a lot of information from YouTube and the internet in general. Some of the content creators that I follow just so happen to talk about politics, even if I disagree with their takes. I didn't even watch their videos if they don't interest me at all. Which brings us to the idea that YouTube can radicalize people to certain ideologies. I've had my encounter of radical conspiracy theories and ideas on YouTube and the internet in general, and I also used to believe those radical ideas, or at least I thought I did because Twitter locked me off their website for being a feminist. But as time went on, I've strayed further away from those radical ideas and listened to many other voices. I focus on the facts, and thankfully I have the will and the brain power to process them so that I can reach a more conclusive, logical, and most importantly, practical understanding of the situation. Unfortunately, some people just don't have the same processing capacity that I and the other average-minded types can. And ultimately, that's one of the main reasons why some people are very susceptible to radical ideas on the internet. Their brains work like sponges and they absorb information instead of processing them and thinking, maybe eradicating the Jews isn't such a good idea, especially when I could have spent those times paying for a premium subscription for a dying hentai website. Actually, you know what? Let's guess. Can people be radicalized to certain viewpoints thanks to videos on YouTube? Sure, and most people usually criticize those radical viewpoints through videos, or blogs, or even actual discussions. But that's not the right question to ask. The right question to ask is, what are you going to do about it?
How YouTube pulled these men down a vortex of far-right hate. The algorithm that keeps people watching more and more videos has a dark side. It's being used to radicalize young people.
The article introduced this idea that YouTube pulled a lot of young men down into the vortex of far-right hate, but one thing that you need to be aware of when we're talking about YouTube is that most of the content creators on YouTube that talk about political topics are always leaning between either the center-left or the far right. There are some YouTubers out there who are leaning far left that are quite popular, but most of the popular political YouTubers on YouTube that I notice are leaning anywhere on the right of the far left. How can this happen? Simple really. Most people are not on the far left, and YouTube videos are pretty easy to make for the average guys, which is why you got more YouTube content that are not far left. Why do people make more center or right-leaning content? Simple. The far left makes some of the most ridiculous arguments, the hottest of takes, and they did nothing but damage the industry and ruin your favorite entertainment medium. That's what makes people to move themselves away from the left. But despite being told this exact same thing many times, nobody on the far left are listening at all. They're gonna keep doing the same tactics over and over again, expecting them to work. This article is gonna be a wash to get through, but before we go on even further, I want to say huge thanks to my new patrons, Alexander, Strichel, E, and Rune. You guys are fantastic. So the article starts off by talking about David Sherratt, aka Spinosaurus Skin on YouTube. I used to subscribe to Spino until he's pretty lazy on his content. Apparently as of late, he decided that he wanted to appeal more to the progressives. Why? I don't know, and I don't care honestly, but the Daily Beast featured this YouTuber to talk about how he got himself into the far-right ideology. I don't know what he's been up to as of late, but that's not the relevant point here. The point that this article tries to illustrate with Spino's story is that young people who are easily impressionable can put themselves into the fascist, Nazi, Holocaust denial ideology. Now yes, there are some validity in that argument. There are thousands of videos out there on YouTube, and young people, teenagers specifically, can stumble upon these videos and get radicalized by these ideas. How can this happen? Two simple formulas. YouTube videos are getting easier to make for the average, and the average got attacked constantly by the far left media. Do the chemistry, guys, it's not that hard. So what's the solution? Well, the progressives wanted the easy route of just straight up censoring them or banning them off the platform, because why would you need to discuss your ideas when you can just take out the ban hammer? I myself personally think that all sorts of ideas, even the most monstrous ones, should have a place for discussion, because censorship is an easy solution that works about as well as putting a small bandage on a sinking Titanic. The best way to curb terrible ideas is to expose them into the public and let people know why these ideas are bad. And most importantly, let these lunatics to speak. We won't know who's the lunatic unless someone talks or acts first. Let me show you. Here's a chemistry teacher and here's a meth dealer. Quick, who's the bad guy? The progressives unfortunately cannot process these bad ideas, or at least what they consider to be bad, and thus they went in with the easy route of just banning people outright, which in turn only makes those people to have more exposure than they got before. Seriously, if it weren't for the mainstream media getting mad at PewDiePie for promoting ER, he wouldn't have gained more subscribers and attention. He just became the one channel out of 30 plus that PewDiePie shilled on his video that got the most attention. Good job, media.
I think one of the real things that made it so difficult to get out and realize how radicalized I'd become in certain areas was the fact that in a lot of ways, far-right people make themselves sound less far-right, more moderate, or more left-wing.
Far-right people makes themselves sound less far-right. In other words, they have much better methods of persuasion or deception depending on your perspective and your opinion on the far-right. And how are you going to deal with these people? Censor them, DMCA their channel, cut off their revenue stream, offer alternative ideas and try to prove how they're wrong, present them in a more convincing and persuasive fashion, having a rational discussion, smug anime face? Does that sound like an unreasonable request? The article then goes on to talk about how YouTube becomes a quiet powerhouse of political radicalization in recent years, powered by an algorithm that suggests increasingly fringe content. We don't really know how the recommendation algorithm works, so I'm not gonna jump the gun in suggesting that the algorithm is designed to lead people to these fringe content, especially when most of the political YouTubers, and most people in general, are definitely right of the far left. But the concern that the article raised here is within young people. Can young people get radicalized by extreme ideologies on YouTube? Absolutely, the same way they can get radicalized by extreme ideologies on the mainstream media or pretty much anywhere else. You know, like this guy.
You are promoting ignorance, racism, genocide, anti-Semitism. These are all things that you are putting forward when you are doing anything that promotes PewDiePie.
I really don't like when the alternative to a certain extreme ideology is another extreme ideology, except it's from the other side. The article then cited Becca Lewis and her data and society research that I talk about in my PewDiePie video briefly. I didn't elaborate further in why this is fake news because this is really old news. To make a long story short, there are people on that map who are barely connected or don't even have any connections at all. You can also put this map in another perspective. You can switch the roles of any individual on this chart to any mainstream media outlet and you'll find even more controversial figures. This chart is incredibly conspiratorial. The person who made the chart is ideologically driven and all she wants is to demonize these people so that people are encouraged to not listen to their ideas. Now there are controversial figures on this chart, but no matter how controversial these people can be, we should give them the ability to speak. How else are we going to know who's the normal guy and who's the crazy guy? But then again, the purpose of demonization is to put all of them on the same level as the crazy guys. All of these people are crazy and you should never ever watch any of their videos or else you'll turn to the Nazis. What you should read are these mainstream media outlets that led you to believe stuff like this.
You are promoting ignorance, racism, genocide, anti-Semitism. These are all things that you are putting forward when you are doing anything that promotes PewDiePie.
The article then puts all of the Nazi and Holocaust denial and flat earther content into this wide umbrella of a movement that opposes feminism and racial equality, the anti-social justice or anti-SJWs. Being anti-social justice is not the same as being a Nazi or a Holocaust denier or even far right or especially a flat earther. I for one don't like the current social justice movement today because they are authoritarian and uses their power to create social injustice rather than social justice. The article then talks about someone by the name of Andrew, a former white supremacist who has since renounced the movement. He has blogs about topics like racial justice, gender equality, and one of his personal passion, being a furry. Oh my. And this article is not complete without talking about the Gamergate controversy, because of course you cannot get through a progressive summary of the radicalization of the young minds without talking about the one event that kind of brought the anti-SJW movement into the mainstream. Now I was part of Gamergate back then, I'm not now because it's a dead movement. Is Gamergate about harassing women? No, it's about game journalists being unethical and we're calling them out through this hashtag. I have no interest in going after women and harass them. It's a waste of my time and I would have spent them on something else like reading yaoi doujins. I do have interest in video games and films and anime. I don't want all of these things to be corrupted by a movement that proclaims to be about social justice when they are not. It doesn't make sense that gamers want women to be driven out of gaming. It doesn't make sense that gamers just don't like female characters in video games. None of this makes any sense. I joined the movement because you people on the progressives are not making any sense. You're telling me ideas that are wrong, insulting, and dehumanizing as someone who plays video games. I find these ideas monstrously inaccurate, and you wonder why people are shifting to the right. But the article doesn't stop there, oh no. The former white supremacist furry Andrew then said that SJWs were never a threat to video games. Really, Andrew? Then please tell me how Battlefield 5 is doing now with all of that social justice historical revisionism. What was that phrase that people say again when talking about games that got woke and then got broke?
I think the anti-SJW stuff appeals to young white guys who feel like they're losing their status, for lack of a better term. They see that minorities are advocating for their own rights and this makes them uncomfortable, so they try and fight against it.
Wow. Can you imagine someone believing this for real? Can you imagine someone who legitimately believes that people who are against social justice are young white men who are uncomfortable with minorities advocating for their rights? How brainwashed do you have to be to actually think this way? Now, I do have to be fair to Andrew. He did say that anti-feminist content can act as a gateway to more extreme videos. I agree. There are some people who went way too far down the rabbit hole and they lost any sense of purpose. They went from defending their video games to actually harassing people on the internet. I have seen how these people change. However, the next part is something that I cannot agree.
The false idea that social justice have some sort of nefarious ulterior motive, that they're distorting the truth somehow, can help open viewers to more extreme causes.
I love that this dude doesn't believe that his idea is somehow not flawed or that they're not based on distorted truths or facts. He believes that social justice is for something good and that social justice did nothing wrong. That is a very convincing position. I am seriously wondering how the far right is able to recruit people easier. The article then talked about a bunch of armed lunatics being caused by people believing conspiracy theories on the internet. But I find it quite interesting that the article talked about a man who allegedly threatened a massacre on YouTube headquarters without mentioning the actual YouTube massacre being done by a woman, mind you. The article then went on to actually criticize radical ideas like ISIS and the popular radical cleric YouTubers that radicalize multiple would-be terrorists. Good for you, article, for making that distinction. Now, can you do the same thing to mildly center-left or center-right YouTubers instead of piling them on the same level as the far right? And then, of course, the article talked about the PewDiePie incident, which is presumably the one that spawned this entire thing. Again, ER is not a Nazi. And if he is, one, you people in the mainstream media have done a really bad job at making him not well known, and two, I binge ER's content since last year, and yet I'm not a Nazi. Great job, ER. Finally, the article ends by saying that banning people doesn't work. And that, my friend, is a good way to end this entire stupidity. I'm glad that at least some people in the progressive sphere realize how ineffective banning these channels can be. So what can we take from this entire article? Well, this article is from the Daily Beast, and it's mirroring pretty much a lot of people and putting almost everyone on YouTube to the far-right ideology. Yes, people can be radicalized to more extreme ideas, but if your solution to that is to blatantly lie and make terrible arguments and demonize your average everyday person, then you have successfully made your cause to be something that people will avoid. You have successfully made people to stay away from your political side into either the center or the complete opposite of the spectrum. Good job. This isn't a question of whose political sides I agree the most. This is a question of how good you are at persuading people to stay away from the extremists. And by spreading tons of factually inaccurate and disingenuous arguments, this article and the rest of the far left fringes do a terrible job at it. Let's make this very simple. You far left people make ridiculous arguments. Hundreds of people, including me, make YouTube videos debunking the arguments, ranging from a center left position to a far right position even. And thanks to the thousands of videos from these people on these positions, YouTube has successfully become the vortex that pulled a lot of men into the far right position. Or to be more precise, the mainstream media has successfully become the tornado that pushed people away from the left. In other words, you caused this. You people talk about how the far right uses memes to get people to their ideas, and you are totally right. You know what kind of memes they make? The kind of memes that make fun of you. The people on the far right knows the meme culture a lot more than you, and here's the thing, they don't have to put much effort into it. You are so unbelievably crazy that all they need to do is to show how crazy you are, uncut and uncensored. That's it. It's all they need to do to get people to their side. It's all they need to do to get people to become the next neo-Nazis. Unfortunately, since you're way too stupid and way too crazy to realize this, you're gonna keep making BS articles after BS articles accusing the most innocuous things to be a Nazi white supremacist propaganda. If you people are scared about the far right taking over the world, I think you should be more scared of the ones that push your average everyday man into them.